any creative idea should be pushed to the point where it can earn its own media in an ideal world. If you've got an idea, you can advertise it to people, but why would you choose an idea that couldn't earn media when you're going to get a lot of technically sort of like cheaper eyeballs? So in general, we try to look for things that are going to earn media.
Hi, I'm Jason Harris, and you're listening to Soul and Science. Fast forward your marketing mind in about 20 minutes. Today, I'm joined by Stuart Smith, CMO of CAULIPOWER. As a scientist with a PhD from Oxford who found his way into the world of brand building, Stuart Smith believes in the art and science of marketing. He is the first scientist we've had on with a PhD from Oxford, by the way. He has over 30 years experience in growth strategy, brand building, and marketing. He has held senior positions at agencies like Edelman, Ogilvy, which is now part of WPP, as well as brands, and has worked across many industries, geographies, in the private sector and in government. He has worked with companies as diverse as P&G, Intel, Nestle, Microsoft, and Unilever at both brand and corporate levels. At CAULIPOWER, Stuart has helped create a brand out of nothing. He's helped drive growth and build a brand with a focus on precision marketing, brand building, demand generation, and consumer acquisition. His efforts have supported the company's growth from 25 million to over 110 million in less than 4 years by expanding the company's marketing to lower funnel strategies, both off and online. He believes in data-driven decision-making. He oversees all strategy, creative, and planning for the brand. He has created an integrated team which oversees sales, marketing, demand generation, and all programs as listed above. Stuart has expanded his team's responsibilities to include product innovation, data, analytics, brand management, and retail shopper marketing. All right, let's dive right in. Stuart, it seems like you started in a CMO role and now you basically are responsible for all parts of the company. Have you noticed a shift from when you had your team responsible for product innovation sort of separate and then when it was tucked under you?
I mean, we've been through sort of 2 or 3 phases, I suppose. The first phase when the company was launched, marketing was very much sort of a buzz engine, and I don't mean that in a pejorative kind of way. But it was making a lot of noise, doing a lot of fun stuff. We're here, we're the first cauliflower-crust pizza. This is something you never realised you needed, but here it is. And we just made a lot of noise through Facebook and Instagram. Then we moved into a sort of we've launched, we're growing through distribution. We now need to start thinking about the sort of the science of retail marketing. So we started looking at data. We started sort of doing a lot more lower funnel consumer acquisition. Shopper marketing came on board. And then the third phase, which basically you just described, is we've recently hired a couple of brand managers, and they will have, it'll be their job to create a plan, to create a P&L for the product, and to be intimately involved in the innovation and the stage gate process. I mean, it's a move towards a more classic CPG definition of marketing, which is, as you know, sort of not just about the marketing communications, but about the strategy and the product and the innovation.
All right, before we get into more CAULIPOWER, let's talk about the Stuart Smith origin story. How did you end up in marketing?
How I end up being where I am is it's a series of sort of, for those that remember the movie, sliding door moments. And it sort of involves an elevator, a restroom, and a brunch.
An elevator, a restroom, and a brunch.
I was handing in my third year undergrad thesis. It was heavy. I had to go to the 5th floor of the chemistry building. And so I pressed the elevator button and the elevator didn't come. It didn't come. So I read a notice board and I saw an application for a PhD at Oxford. So I took it off the notice board, then turned around, slipped on a bit of paper and picked it up, and it said elevator broken. And if that bit of paper had not fallen off the elevator, I would have walked straight past the application for the PhD, and I never would have gone to Oxford. I just would have walked up, 5 flights of stairs.
That's amazing.
Then I did the PhD, and then my girlfriend, who then turned into my first wife, but my girlfriend at the time, she was at a conference, and it was an environmental conference, and she was in the restroom talking to a woman, and they were just putting their lippy on and just repairing their makeup. And one turned around to her and said, "You know what? I can't believe it. I've got to find a PhD chemist who knows something about atmospheric chemistry." And that's how I got my first job, basically. It was because she had a chat with someone in in the ladies' restroom. And then basically, to get it to marketing, I ended up at a science consultancy examining European environmental legislation and doing that as a contract to the UK government. And one day I met a guy over brunch who was the chairman of Burson Marsteller, a big PR lobbying firm, and he said, "You're not a scientist. You're not a consulting scientist." He said, "You're a lobbyist." So I joined Burson Marsteller based on a brunch I had with someone. That was Burson Marsteller in London. So I was sort of headed up an environmental affairs unit, helping companies understand environmental legislation. And then I moved into PR, and then I moved into healthcare PR, and then I sort of broadened out, went into advertising, and the rest of it's on my LinkedIn page.
Did you go to Edelman after that?
I went in-house for a bit. I was at 3M, the innovation company, the makers of Post-it notes, for 3 or 4 years. Then I went in the government for a couple of years, doing communications for a government regulator. That was a lot of fun because it was essentially a regulator that was bashing central and local government performance on public spending. So, the marketing was basically publicizing the fact that someone was looking out for how people's tax dollars were being spent.
At Ogilvy, was that more advertising, or was it also sort of PR?
With the advent of social back in the early noughts, it forced PR companies to start to think about creativity. Before the big ad world worked out that social media was a thing and it was important and it was going to draw eyeballs and therefore media money, people looking after social media were often the PR teams. And so they started creating sort of creative departments, people making social media and doing, community engagement and a lot of that sort of stuff. So the PR industry that I was in shifted with the advent of social media.
Before CAULIPOWER, did you have other in-house jobs as well?
No. I was in sort of Edelman, Hill & Knowlton, Ogilvy, WPP until my wife said, "Come and work for me at CAULIPOWER."
Oh my God, that's amazing. And how's that dynamic?
It's good, actually. I mean, it's funny. The funny thing is, we had a very long distance relationship. We started dating when I was in London and she was in LA. And we got married in 2015 while I was still in New York. So I didn't actually live with Gail until I moved on a Friday to move in with her. And on the Monday, I started working for her.
All right. And so what do you feel like your marketing superpower is?
I think it changes as you get a bit older. I think in my sort of earlier career, I had a boss tell me that my superpower was basically being able to create a strategy from scratch. When people were sort of trying to work out, what a client needed or what route they should go or what the strategy was, and we sort of were still diving around the data. Being able to create some clarity from a lot of noise was something I was pretty good at. But I think now it's different. With age comes an ability to sort of recognize patterns.
Yep.
I still enjoy forcing data to tell me a story. But to be honest, at this stage, it's about, getting the best out of people. I think the best work I do now is getting others to do better work than they realize they can do. You've
become more of a leader. Can you give us the CAULIPOWER story?
Yeah, sure, for sure. Gail's got two sons who are older now, but back in the day, 20 years ago, they were both diagnosed with celiac disease. And, as a really good, wonderful mother that she is, she decided that, she would try and help them not miss out on stuff. So she was always looking for good gluten-free food, but a lot of the gluten-free food that she saw in the stores was full of fat, sugar, salt, things that sort of try to replace some of the stuff you lose, some of the taste you lose when you take the gluten out of a meal. So she made a cauliflower-crust pizza once. It took her 90 minutes, and the kids basically said, "Yes, let's have it again." And she was like, doing a busy senior job at Edelman and had no time to do that. So she went looking for it and realized that even though there were millions of recipes for meal hack cauliflower-crust pizzas on the internet, there was absolutely nothing in the freezer aisle, nothing that you could just go and grab and buy. So she ditched her job and took some of the money that her father left her, and she put it all into CAULIPOWER. She launched it in February of 2017 in Whole Foods, and then it was in Walmart by October that year.
Wow, that's really fast traction. When you started working together, what was the move like from the agency life into more of the entrepreneurial life?
Well, I was worried that, I would be going from sort of working, with having 4 people in my team from 3,000. I thought it's going to be a bit strange. But in the end, you realize that on a day-to-day basis, no matter how big the company is, you're only really ever working closely on a day-to-day basis with 5 or 6 people.
Right.
And so I didn't miss the scale at all. But what I really enjoyed was seeing the result very, very quickly. Working on big campaigns for big CPG companies, there's a life cycle to an idea. It takes a while to get it made, to get it into market. The great thing was, Gail with her marketing background and myself and a lovely small but mighty little team, we had an idea on a Monday and it was in market by Thursday. And there was huge satisfaction doing that.
I love that. And how does the business kind of work in a broad sense? Is it drive revenue through primarily getting in more doors? Is it product innovation?
It depends on the life cycle. I mean, you know this. It depends on the life cycle. You originally start growing through distribution. You get into a whole bunch of doors. Your unit velocity goes up. Then you get into more doors, and at some point the unit velocity starts to sort of plateau out. And then at that stage, what I've sort of tried to do, although I'm not directly responsible for sales, I use the sort of phrase demand generation to say, okay, look, sales gets it on a shelf, but ultimately it's sales and marketing who have to get it off the shelf. There's a lot of money spent on trade marketing. There's a lot of money spent on sort of marketing. And what we've tried to do is make sure that we understand where the life cycle of a product is. Is this one growing through distribution for a year and a half? Are we now at a point where we've got to increase unit velocity, increase consumer loyalty, trade people up? So there's a big mix of it, but we're definitely at the stage now where we're looking at a demand-led kind of model where, if we want to grow next year by, let's say, 1 million units of pizza, where are those units going to come from? How many households do we have to get? How are we going to acquire those households? How do we do that at least cost? So we sort of work on a demand gen model where we look at the influence of distribution, price, shopper marketing, other marketing, if that helps. Is that a slightly overcomplicated answer?
No, that's super clear, actually. And do you find that the community is loyal to the brand?
There is a loyal customer base, but there's also a quite sort of flighty, promiscuous consumer that comes in and out of brands and in and out of a category, who sort of, pops between conventional to better for you to, dairy free and back to keto. But there's enough of a loyal base so that we can actually sort of nurture that consumer. But also what we look at is a sort of a consumer acquisition model that assumes, quite a high level of churn, 10, 15% of consumers a year. But what I've tried to do, and this is sort of goes back to your point about sort of science and marketing, is really understand exactly who is the consumer that's persuaded into our brand and into our category. What do they look like? We call them SAM, male, female, gender neutral, fluid, whatever. But it's SAM is our sort of mental image of the consumer. And we're a lifestyle brand. He, she have come into the brand because they've chosen a particular lifestyle, they've chosen a particular diet, or they have a particular dietary need. And we know what they look like. And the great thing is, for every one that's in the brand, there are 20 outside the brand. So what we try to do is look at using precision marketing to acquire a consumer at some sort of, $2, $3 a unit. And then we use a lot of, straightforward marketing stuff to keep them in and trade them up from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. So
that's great.
It's a bit of a mix.
And then you've had some really fun activations like Sick of My Own Cooking cookbook, the petition for a cauliflower emoji, some really headline inducing ideas. Is that for driving PR and awareness, or do you find that those efforts also ultimately turn into sales?
What I love about working at CAULIPOWER and working in a small, fast-growing company is that you continue to learn. You can teach an old dog new tricks. And it's been fun sort of watching and testing some stuff. And I think that my general philosophy is that, any creative idea, should be pushed to the point where it can earn its own media in an ideal world. If you've got an idea, you can advertise it to people, but why would you choose an idea that couldn't earn media when you're going to get a lot of technically sort of like cheaper eyeballs? So in general, we try to look for things that are going to earn media. And I suppose the sick of your own cooking idea was a moment for Sam. We knew that Sam, because we have a lot of people in our company and we do a lot of market research, we knew that Sam was pretty much sick of their own cooking. So we did a sick of your own cooking video and said, look, why cook? Just go and buy this pizza. It's fantastic and it's fun. So it was just a bit of fun. It was relatable. We didn't put a huge amount of money behind it. We didn't put a lot of money behind the emoji idea either. So it was just a bit of fun, to be honest.
I've never heard it expressed that simply, but I love what you said. A big idea should be big enough it can earn its own media placement without having to spend too much on it. And do you find that, you have like when you're working with the team, 20 of those types of ideas, how do you determine which idea you want to filter and put out into the world? Do you do any market research? Do you just sort of sit around the big table and ultimately Stuart Smith decides like, we're going to go with this one? How does that process work?
Oh no, I don't decide. I don't decide. I don't look, nor do I sound like our sort of typical consumer. So while my part of the creative process is to be more of an ECD and poke and prod at the ideas that people that know Sam better than me come up with. So my team and Gail herself, she's still like the creative driver for ideas. But the emoji idea came up very simply because we text each other all the time. It's like, well, where's the cauliflower emoji? Where is it? Why is there one for broccoli? And why isn't there one for cauliflower? It still doesn't make sense to me. It really, and actually, it's quite difficult. If anyone's ever tried to get the organisation that governs this to actually create a cauliflower emoji, I still don't understand. There must be some cauliflower haters at Unicode. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, we didn't put a huge amount of money. I think there was like $500 for a bit of filming at that Studio City farmers market on a Sunday, and it was just a social media play. More interestingly, we did do the pizza droop campaign. So again, nothing about the product except Gail saying one day, if the crust isn't crispy, it's not pizza. And so that's a mantra that she has. And we said, well, maybe we should turn that into some sort of ad. And one day we were testing some competitors' products and they were sort of drooping because a lot of these gluten-free pizzas out there, they don't actually look, taste or cook like pizza the way ours does.
They're like soft and they're kind of gross.
Yeah, exactly. So they droop. So out of that was born a slightly irreverent sort of idea that, you should come to us or go to the doctor to get pizza droop cured. And a doctor prescribing a cauliflower pizza crust to the young couple in the ad.
That's a great idea. I love that work. Do you ever barter and say, I'm not going to visiting day at Michigan if you don't approve this idea? Pull out the spouse card.
Oh no, I never do that. No, in the end, I mean, it's a happy wife, happy life is another mantra that I've realised. But actually, it's less that. It's more that she has tremendously good judgment. I mean, she really knows this consumer.
I'm a big guy that believes in naming and identity and like how powerful that is for brands. And I think the name CAULIPOWER is so strong. It's really great.
Thank you.
And then you have the food for deliciatarians. Tell me about how that connects with the brand as well.
I mean, you'll know this from the work you do at your agency and all the clients you've worked with, but sometimes clients, they're sort of carrying around a bag full of phrases and words and, they all seem to have a unit value of one. So we basically found a lovely copywriter who I used to work with at Ogilvy, and I sort of handed him all of our words and phrases. And I said, look, I'm not really looking for a real beauty, but I'm sort of looking for a real beauty. I want something. I want an idea that unites all of the products and sort of unites and sort of says who we are. And I think one of the insights that you always need for these sorts of ideas are things like everyone who wants a healthy lifestyle wants healthier food. So healthy lifestyles are not going away people will always want healthier food, and as people become healthier as they are over years, this whole better for you food thing will not go away. A little bit less demand maybe at the moment during an inflationary price sensitive period, but it's not going away, and we're growing. In the last year we've grown 10-15%. So once you sort of get the idea that better for you is important, then the question is better for you food going to taste good? And there are two ideas. One is there are people choosing keto, there are people choosing vegan, there are people who are flexitarian, pescatarian, whatever. But there's one thing that unites us all, which is the food's got to be delicious. So we are all, whether we're vegans or vegetarians, we're all deliciatarians. That's sort of the idea.
So do you find consumers are more motivated by taste first and healthiness second, or do they look for healthy products that have to taste really good?
It's a really good question. I think where we ended up, and it's probably worth revisiting it, where we ended up was they come for the health and they stay for the taste.
Have you seen it from your perspective, the better for you food industry change a lot in its marketing efforts, in its product innovation?
Well, it's interesting. It's like, I think that the evidence of the need for a brand like CAULIPOWER was evident in the marketplace. As I think I said before, there were, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of recipes and people making better for you food on the internet, making better for you pizzas, making better for you coated chicken tenders, people who are trying to meal hack their way to a healthier version of the comfort food that they love. So there was a definite need in the marketplace, but it was a need that big food, traditional food, and the traditional food brands were not really satisfying. They weren't recognizing it. It seemed like a small part of the market. Why would they, bother? And what I think Gail did with CAULIPOWER is that she made a market. I'd say probably 5% of the $6 billion pizza industry is now better for you food because of the cauliflower crust pizza that Gail launched. And now, there are bigger companies who are chasing, fast following with a cauliflower crust SKU here and there. But over the years, we've never dipped below 60% of our market share of the cauliflower crust pizza market. Even though we're one company with 4 or 5 SKUs of pizza, and we have 80 SKUs of competitors with their guns pointed at us, we're still dominant because we taste really good, and we're sort of America's number one pizza. So I do think that by launching this pizza, the one that she made for her 2 kids, she has made a fundamental shift in the way that big food thinks about the better for you category.
How important being first in the category is in maintaining your market share? Do you think that's critical because you've got bigger players coming in, but you were there first, you have a clear name? Do you think that gave you a big advantage?
We're trying to have something unique about our products in the market. The cauliflower crust pizza was unique. The air fried vegetable coated chicken tenders are unique in the sense that there's nothing else like it on the market. They're the lowest calorie. You can eat an entire bag of our chicken tenders for some ludicrously low number of calories. I think so. That's partly what we're trying to do, is trying to make sure that whatever we go into we're unique. So there is some first mover advantage. But now that the brand is a little bit bigger, we can be a fast follower in certain categories. We're not the first people to do a gluten-free pasta, but we're the first ones to do a gluten-free pasta that looks, cooks, and tastes like pasta, straight from frozen. We're not the first to do a gluten-free frozen meal, but we've just launched our own gluten-free pasta meals as well. So I think innovation is important, but there's nothing wrong with being a fast follower.
Is there like a barometer where you determine with Gail and the team, this product's good, but it's not good enough, or this product is 2 steps too far for our brand to stretch? We're not elastic enough to go into that space. How do you kind of make those decisions on your innovations? It's not a science, but, just curious.
Well, it is a bit. I mean, as we've grown up, we created a stage gate process for innovation. The tricky bit is creating a stage gate for innovation, but without slowing down the innovation and taking the fun and the surprise out of it. So, we do look at sort of the next categories that we will go into. I think that there's a whole bunch of ideas on a wall and 5 or 6 may go forward to be sort of stage gate 2, and then we'll discover we can't make it cheap enough, and then we'll do some market research and realize that people don't want it. And then, 2 or 3 will survive and sort of get onto the shelf ultimately. But it's important that we go through that. But it is a bit of science and it is a bit of art all the way through that process. And it's a bit of gut as well. It's like, you know what, the numbers are a bit 50-50, but you know what, I feel good about this idea. We're going to do it. There was one product that Gail created, which is a baking powder made out of cauliflower flour. And I thought, well, that's a genius second product. It was the second product after the pizza. I said, why pick the second product? With flour, anyone can make anything they want. And it did do really well. But ultimately, what we found was using cauliflower flour is actually quite hard. And it doesn't cook or bake the way that you expect it to. And you have to be pretty expert. So it would make great brownies. But when someone tried to make an apple pie, people weren't expert enough to use this. So in the end, it was a great product idea, but one that, wasn't a great consumer experience. But it became the coating for the chicken tenders.
Wow.
So the innovation that died, the baking powder, became the coating for the chicken tenders, which is now a big chunk of our business.
You call it art and science. Are you more soul and science in your decision making?
To your point earlier, I think I'm a bit of both, but I think it's sort of a bit like trust but verify. So, I listen to my soul, but I'll use the science to verify it. And sometimes I believe that science or data can inspire my creativity or my soul, I suppose. So it's a bit of a two-way street, really.
As the company grows and you hire more people, do you think, as the CMO, do you also think about internal marketing?
From a personal point of view, every leader has to sort of have that mantra in their head around sort of, your job as a leader is to unite, focus, and motivate people. And it's a fairly, there is a bit of science to leadership about sort of, making sure people are on board with what you're doing, making sure they understand their role, helping motivate people to sort of do stuff. And I think we're lucky because people have been self-selecting. The people that come and stay are the people that, believe in the mission of the company. They're motivated by what we do, but also obviously motivated by how they're treated and what their direct line managers like as well. The other thing that I find useful about style is there was a great article I read in the Harvard Business Review a few years ago. It's the concept of a servant leader.
Yeah,
people are talking about it more and more, but it's quite an old idea, and I've always liked it because it tells you what your job is to support other people. And part of the secret of anything that I've achieved is that I've worked with some really people who are much smarter than me in what they do. Part of what I've really enjoyed about CAULIPOWER is helping Gail build a team of really smart people doing all that stuff.
Do you have any role models that have inspired you throughout your career?
It's funny, I was thinking about role models, and I was having great difficulty. I was coming up with Obama and philosophers and economists and stuff like that, and I suddenly realized that I have an immense amount of respect for my wife. She's been a role model for me. Gail is my role model. I think as a wife, she's taught me to be a better husband and a better father than I think I had been in the past. But more importantly, as an entrepreneur and as a boss, she's the best boss I've ever had. She's resilient, determined, smart. She's created something out of nothing. She inspires people. She has the highest EQ of anyone I've ever met on the planet.
I don't think anyone's ever said their role model was their wife before on this podcast or any other podcast. So that is a very amazing answer, and I love that. Do you also have a favorite quote or mantra that you go back to when you face a challenge or a hard time or a way that you lead? Do you kind of go back to the well on something that floats in your head?
That's brilliantly phrased, because actually I've picked one that's exactly that. My mantra for those days is something that I think people have heard before, but it's like, don't be defined by your challenges, be defined by how you face them. So, it's a bit of Shakespeare. The Shakespeare quote is, To be or not to be, that is the question, whether it be noble in the heart to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And then it goes on, but the most important part for me is take up arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them.
I love that. Where do you do your best work? Where are you the most creative or the most productive?
I'm a mixture of a sort of an emotional vampire and a solitary worker. So I do some of my best work on my own on a Saturday morning with a coffee, but some of my really good work is done when I'm with people. I do a lot of my thinking by talking with people who are smarter than me. I get a lot of joy and a lot of energy from a room full of people or just talking to someone on Zoom.
Do you have like a goal that's always been there or is a new goal, but something that you want to accomplish, and so you can say it out loud, put it into the universe?
Well, this weekend in New York, it was, I really have got to stop running half marathons and start running marathons. I'd love to do that. That's a simple one. But actually, to be quite frank, we've got 4 kids between us. My life goal now, is just to see them all happy and healthy. It's very simple. I've let go of things and experiences, and I just want to see them do well.
This is the final question for you. How do you describe the Stuart Smith business style in one word?
Well, it was going back to that servant leader idea, but I hope it's supportive. If there was one word that describes my business style, I think it's supportive.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for being with us. Congrats on all the success you've had at CAULIPOWER, and we can't wait to see what comes out next and to see where the brand goes, and we'll be watching. So thanks for being on the podcast. Thank you.
Coupons will be coming to you and the team, and I promise I'm going to read your book as well. I noticed that today, so I should put that on my Christmas list.
Oh, please do.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Enjoyed it.
Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, Tyler Nielsen, Emma Swanson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.